In reading class, for the rest of the school year, we're going to be learning about the genre of fantasy. Genre are the types of books. So the type of book we're reading is fantasy. And the genre of fantasy involves things that are make-believe. Like you see up here, I clicked fiction. So they're fiction. They are made-believe. And one big piece of fiction fantasy books are magic. You will see things happen that don't normally happen. Like you'll see animals talking. Animals might be wearing clothes and walking and doing things in the way a human might. You might have creatures that are not real, like dragons or unicorns. So let's see. We're going to start today by listening to a fantasy book. And the way that you might get there is you go up into Epic when it's free time for you to read, and you can go in, you can click in here, you can just put in the word fantasy and see what comes up. And click on the microphone. Yep. And all these books will come up that are fantasy. Some are some higher reading levels, like you might see here it has a level Q, but this group that is with me for this, Q is pretty high. I would go more for levels that are probably around F, G, H, that type. But let's go. I want a certain book, so I'm going to put in here the Paper Bag Princess. Aha, there it is. Okay, so we're going to click on here, and we're going to listen. All we're doing for this one is listening to them read the book. Just enjoy.
Was a beautiful princess. She lived in a castle and had expensive princess clothes. She was going to marry a prince named Ronald. Unfortunately, a dragon smashed her castle, burned all her clothes with his fiery breath, and carried off Prince Ronald. Elizabeth decided to chase the dragon and get Ronald back. She looked everywhere for something to wear, but the only thing she could find that was not burnt was a paper bag. So she put on the paper bag and followed the dragon. He was easy to follow because he left a trail of burnt forests and horses' bones. Finally, Elizabeth came to a cave with a large door that had a huge knocker on it. She took hold of the knocker and banged on the door. The dragon stuck his nose out of the door and said, "Well, a princess. I love to eat princesses, but I have already eaten a whole castle today. I am a very busy dragon. Come back tomorrow." He slammed the door so fast that Elizabeth almost got her nose caught. Elizabeth grabbed the knocker and banged on the door again. The dragon stuck his nose out of the door and said, "Go away. I love to eat princesses, but I have already eaten a whole castle today. I am a very busy dragon. Come back tomorrow." "Wait," shouted Elizabeth. "Is it true that you are the smartest and fiercest dragon in the whole world?" "Yes," said the dragon. "Is it true," said Elizabeth, "that you can burn up 10 forests with your fiery breath?" "Oh, yes," said the dragon. And he took a huge, deep breath and breathed out so much fire that he burnt up 50 forests. "Fantastic," said Elizabeth. And the dragon took another huge breath and breathed out so much fire that he burnt up 100 forests. "Magnificent," said Elizabeth. And the dragon took another huge breath, but this time nothing came out. The dragon didn't even have enough fire left to cook a meatball. Elizabeth said, "Dragon, is it true that you can fly around the world in just 10 seconds?" "Why, yes," said the dragon, and jumped up and flew all the way around the world in just 10 seconds. He was very tired when he got back, but Elizabeth shouted, "Fantastic! Do it again!" So the dragon jumped up and flew around the whole world in just 20 seconds. When he got back, he was too tired to talk, and he lay down and went straight to sleep. Elizabeth whispered very softly, "Hey, dragon." The dragon didn't move at all. She lifted up the dragon's ear and put her head right inside. She shouted as loud as she could, "Hey, dragon!" The dragon was so tired he didn't even move. Elizabeth walked right over the dragon and opened the door to the cave. There was Prince Ronald. He looked at her and said, "Elizabeth, you are a mess. You smell like ashes. Your hair is all tangled, and you are wearing a dirty old paper bag. Come back when you are dressed like a real princess." "Ronald," said Elizabeth, "your clothes are really pretty, and your hair is very neat. You look like a real prince. But you were a bum. They didn't get married after all."
So this story had to do with a dragon eating a whole castle and then taking the prince. Now, that whole sentence seemed kind of silly because that's not real life, is it? Which means that it is certainly fantasy. It is made up. It is a fiction made up story. We don't even have dragons in this world. So that is definitely a fantasy story. Now this word here that the princess used at the end of the story, she said, "But you are a bum." What is a bum? Do you know? A bum means someone who is not very nice. And we know at the end of the story, the prince was not being nice to the princess at all. He made fun of what she was wearing, made fun of her hair, even though he looked perfect. So he was definitely not respectful, not nice. He was a bum. And that is why the princess decided not to marry him. So that is our story, our fantasy story for today. We will meet again on Wednesday, and I will have another recording. We will take a look at this same story, hear it again, and then we'll talk a little bit about it. Okay? Thanks for joining me.